quick check-in. Not that this is a group or therapy, but I want to kind of reset before we start. Um, Lair, maybe I could actually start with you. Uh,
Yeah.
just checking in. How are you doing? How are you feeling?
Um, it's kind of a surreal time. As I shared with you, we are moving to Costa Rica,
Hmm.
and so it's making for kind of a weird Christmas. And it's interesting. And again, we don't have to touch into this now, but we are talking about
Fatherhood.
fatherhood,
Yeah.
being fathers, and I did not have a relationship with my father.
Hmm.
He was sort of out of central casting, not awesome, and he died this week, which I thought
Wow.
was sort of very interesting that these two lines sort of come together with our topic of fatherhood. Me being a father, having not had a father, and then he passed away this week. So
Yeah.
yeah, interesting.
Could be serendipity, depending on what kind of meaning you want to place on it. By the way, Central Casting is a casting agency in
I forget.
I think it's in Los Angeles. For most people
Yeah,
who don't know, it's they cast extras. So
yeah,
Lair is using it as slang.
that's right.
It's very Hollywood. It's very inside. Lair Torrent, a licensed marriage family therapist, author, speaker, father, and what else? What other label should we slap on you?
Um,
Podcaster.
podcast partner. I'm often known as Ashley's husband. Once
Hey,
people
is it,
get to
hey,
know
wait,
her,
is that a good thing or bad thing? Because I think that's kind of funny and all loving when you say it. But
yep.
I have a story where I was only known as my ex-wife's husband. I was
Ooh.
invisible. I didn't have my own
Mm,
identity. I was
mhm,
always known because
mhm.
she was an actress. I was always known as her husband, and it
Mm.
made me feel invisible. But I don't think that's how you mean it.
No, as a matter of fact, like when people meet me in the world, I tend to be, and you alluded to it in our last episode. It's like I'm a little bit like I stand back and kind of assess the situation. It's
Yeah.
primarily because of my childhood wounding. I sort of step back and kind of assess things. She is kind of a universal salve for
Mm,
the energy that I tend to bring. I don't mean to bring an edgy or provocative energy to the table. I'm just sort of there, kind of checking shit out. But she has been sort of that universal solvent often because she's so kind and so her
yeah.
energy is so
Gentle.
sweet. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But Ashley, I think Ashley's more of an introvert, and I feel like you're more of an extrovert, or am I wrong?
No, that's right. Hmm.
Yeah, so it's almost like in social settings, even though you do scope out tech, you kind of check out the temperature, but you're
Hmm.
also very extroverted. Uh,
I am.
and I think she has extroverted skills, but it probably takes her more energy. She's got to hit the
Hmm.
sport mode to go there in
Yeah,
life.
what it's like, she's just sort of my universal pass into situations where it's like,
Mm.
oh, okay, the guy with that shitty look on his face, he's okay because he's with her. Um,
Oh, okay, I can
kind of
relate to that. Yes, that
yeah.
is still
I'm,
that is
well,
me
you have
today.
you have RBF too.
I do have resting bitch face. It's pretty
You
permanent.
do.
It's a little less, but I definitely most people, if they don't know me, they don't like me or they think that guy looks like an asshole. So I'm not warm and approachable for sure.
That's exactly what I mean.
Yeah.
I am not warm and approachable,
Yeah.
and the look on my face is, my mother used to say, "You have a face that looks like it needs a slap most of the time," and I think
Oh,
that's probably right. Yeah, yeah,
I would say you have a face that needs a hug.
yeah.
Maybe that's for me.
Listen, I'll take
um
that. I'll take it.
So this is episode 2 of 5, and, Lair and I we're doing a series, which I'm actually super excited about. And I'm trying to make this not just, a conversation, hopefully an honest conversation, but also, some homework and some actionable items to make it more feel like a course. Today's episode 2, we're gonna talk about men and fatherhood, embracing the life cycle event, transitioning
Mhm.
into fatherhood, and what it means for men's identity and relationships. This series is titled um, "The Unfinished Man," but it's actually it's the unfinished human. It's not
Mm,
just for men,
no,
but since we are men and also fathers, we're starting there. Oh man.
I like
Okay,
that.
so sorry. Go ahead.
No, I like that. I like that. The unfinished man, but really unfinished human. Where and I
Yeah.
like that you qualify there. That's we're starting here because that's our starting point.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
Um, Going back to childhood, so tell us a little bit about how you grew up without a father and what that looked like, and also because of that, how did that manifest in your adulthood relationships and just ripple outward?
Oh man. So my mom was 15 when she had me.
Yeah.
She got pregnant at 14. He was by and large not around. I
Mm,
mean, I look back on it and he was a young, dumb kid without a lot of skill sets. And I don't, I mean, I don't necessarily blame him in totality, but I also don't give him a lot of pass on, there wasn't any child support. We grew up
yeah.
incredibly poor,
Yeah.
no electricity, no heat, no running water. I was raised by five really strong women.
Wait, who are the
So
five? Mom.
my mom, my grandmother, and
Oh,
my
grandma.
aunts were around. Yeah,
Mm,
yeah,
nice.
my yep, hmm yeah. And so, you know, I, my outlook on the world is decidedly. I have a female perspective. I think I say the outside looks very male, but the inside is often kind of wired in a sort of a female perspective. I think I
Mm-hmm.
touched into that last time, and that was both bad and awful growing up as a teen in the 80s. It becomes a super strength, I think, in as an adult
Yeah.
and working with people. Yeah. Hmm.
Why was that difficult growing up in the 80s? Were you bullied? What was it about growing up
Oh yeah.
with five women that affected your childhood? How?
So I didn't walk into a room with a male perspective. I didn't walk into a
Mm,
locker room with a male perspective, and so
mm,
when people were talking and doing things, I was kind of like, what is why? And so I didn't relate. I couldn't relate.
yeah.
Um, and so I assimilated by faking it. But by and large, there was a whole lot of bullying that happened, and until finally one day, and I think this is kind of what happens to all of us who experience anything like that. I grew a side of myself that was ultra masculine.
Mm,
That
right.
that
You swing
my
the other
wife
way.
actually, yeah, my wife calls him Mitch, and it's this part of me that is really good in a bar fight.
Mm,
Um, and he would drop the gloves often, and my clients who hear these stories are like, "Really, you?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that this part of me came up and said, enough. The wounded children within me are going to now be taken care of. I'm not going to take any more of this on the chin." And so
right.
I overcorrected a bit for sure.
Wow. Um,
Hmm.
Man, I'm thinking because as you're telling us the story, I'm thinking about my story. And although I grew up with a dad,
Hmm.
both dad and mom were never home, and so
Ah,
I mean, you know how the '80s was, right? We all were outside playing until the lights turned off, street lights turned off, and
John, they had to put a commercial on to tell our parents to remember
right,
that they had kids.
right, right,
It's, they did.
and so I don't really, I just gravitated toward other men, other male role models. Dad was not someone who gave me
Mhm.
a lot of emotional milk. Never taught me how to throw a ball. Never took me fishing.
Mhm.
Um, I think I forced myself to learn an ability to fit in. So whether it was spinning on my back or BMX bikes or awling over a
Mhm.
trash can, I
Mhm.
always had some kind of ability because I got obsessed with a lot of physical stuff, um, and that was the ticket into not getting bullied. I think I would
Mhm.
have definitely gotten bullied if I wasn't good at something. So it was an ability that got me to kind of roll with the bigger cool kids. Um, but yeah, man, no dad, and I actually was afraid of fighting.
Mhm.
Um, I've only gotten into, one or two fights in my entire life, and what's interesting is, in the bar scene, you grew up with five women, and then there was a side of you. I'm imagining like the Incredible Hulk, where Mitch comes out,
Yep.
and then this side
Mhm.
of you is quote unquote tough,
Mhm.
reactive, angry, is very protective. Would you
Mhm.
say Mitch is there any part of Mitch that is healthy, or is it all coming from wounds and fear?
It's coming from it's coming from wounds, it's coming from fear, and it's coming from I guess the healthy side is to protect in a way that says you are
Mm,
not going to have any, you're not, that's not going to happen anymore. This is done now.
yeah.
And I think this is true, that at some level men have to know that you can do that. There has to be a dangerous side to all of us.
Like almost
Um,
like a rite of passage kind of thing.
I
Like you
think
have to
just
go through this to feel safe in self that you could actually throw a punch.
I like to say I know myself a little bit better because I've been punched in the face a bunch.
Yeah,
And
I envy. I actually wish I got into more fights. It doesn't
mm,
matter who won.
mm,
Um, I don't like the fact that I have not. There's something
mhm,
about me who have it's completely opposite of you who have not gotten into many fights that makes me feel like I need to cross that great divide. There, like a couple years ago, I put on some boxing gloves and I told my friend Pete because he's a big guy. I said, "Hey, don't like hurt me, don't break my nose, but let's get in the
mhm,
ring.
mhm,
I'm not a fighter. I want you to
mhm,
like maybe knock me out. I need to know what it feels like." And I started swinging. He didn't take it seriously. He didn't even
mhm,
put on his,
mhm,
and then it was
mhm.
over. But I kind of feel like it's a valuable, even though it's street, I think it's almost a valuable experience for all men to a certain extent. No,
It is. I think it is. It is and it isn't. Like I've gotten to this place now where I would do anything I could possibly do to avoid violence. Like I've
right,
I've come to
right.
the other side where I think violence is stupid, and at the same time, I think the world we live in is a world where I think you need to know that there is a side of you that and people perhaps to know that the play got two and 15, and
Mm,
I'm not going to do them a disservice by putting them out into the world not knowing how to defend themselves. So I
right.
you know I teach them Muay Thai uh, almost every day. But yeah, I've come to the other side, and I think, yeah, I do know something about myself, having been punched in the face a lot, and I know something about myself because I can go there. And there's something about being a man and knowing that about yourself. And at the same time, as I've said, I've come to the other side, and I think violence is kind of shitty and stupid.
I mean, I think that's what makes it healthy is that you come to the other side and believe it's stupid. If you haven't come to the other side, then I think it can be toxic
That's
because you're
right.
still throwing punches. Um,
That's right.
and also as a father now, I do think twice because it's not just about me. And think about consequences. I think about when Vanessa was pregnant, we were actually at a bar and we were talking, and this guy comes up. The guy was drunk. He was being very social with our little parties. Me, Vanessa, and one other person. And he was being very social. And Vanessa and our friend, were engaging back and forth. And then at one point, it turned kind of weird.
Mm,
And then he started like looking me in the eye. And because as I mentioned, I have the resting bitch face. I wasn't as social or as open as
mm.
Vanessa and my friend. And so he kind of pointed me out. At one point, um, he touched my face.
Ooh.
And dude, it was, I wanted to, everything in my body was, I'm going to kill this
Mhm,
guy.
mhm.
But then I just realized my partner's pregnant.
Yeah.
And then I looked around the room and I was like, wait, I think he's got other friends in here.
Mhm,
A street fight these days can turn very ugly. I mean, people have guns, I mean, you could end up in the hospital, like really bad things could happen. And
really
I
bad things.
calmed myself down, but I was really close to just going outside with this guy.
Yep.
But that was probably the closest I've gotten into the fight in the last, 10 years.
Mhm. Yep. Yeah, you don't know where it can go. And having worked in the bar business in New York City at a kind of a throwdown honky tonk, it's like I've seen it go to some really bad places. And
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
broken bones, absolutely.
I-
But I got to be honest with you, the residue of that, I don't know if it's a man thing, but I play that back sometimes, and I get mad at myself that I didn't grab the guy or
mhm,
swing or do something.
mhm,
Um, I feel like I was a coward. I had this primal instinct and I ignored it, and so I don't know
mhm.
what was the right choice. But moments
I
like
think you
that,
made
I've
it.
got a few of them. I feel like less of a man because of those moments for sure.
See, I don't know, man. It's like I think all of that's right. If you were there and you know the situation was assessed differently if Vanessa wasn't there and she wasn't pregnant, I mean, you had a pregnant partner at the time. It's
Yeah.
like yeah, I think you absolutely made the right decision. I think it's actually a braver decision to not go the way of your ego, right? The wise
Yeah.
choice was the one that you made.
Yeah.
Um, you know, the inner critic will tell you that, oh, you were a coward, you didn't stand up for yourself, you didn't stand up for your partner. No, no, no. You have no idea where that could have gone.
Yeah.
And so discretion was the better part of valor for sure. And I think most often that is the case. I don't there are very rare cases where things need to go to a place of violence.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
As a father these days, your sons are in high school, pretty much, right? One
They're homeschooled,
entering
but one's high school
homeschool,
age. Yeah.
the high
Yeah.
school age.
Yeah.
Um, what are some things you focus on as far as like how do you want to show up as a dad? What are things that um,
Mm.
you have a inner conversation about as far as being a dad?
You
What's
know,
important to you?
to well, for me, it's the toughest part has been, um, I think what I've done or tried to do is redefine what strength actually is,
Mm,
and tried to deliver to them the things I did not get,
mm.
because I
And
didn't get
which
so
is
much.
that? Which is what? What are some of the things you did not get?
Well, I think at face value, it goes back to what Carl Rogers said, right? We're all looking for unconditional positive regard from our
Mm-hmm.
parents, and then we
Mm-hmm.
go out into the world looking for the thing we did not get. And for me, that's, am I loved? Am I safe? Am I enough? And do I matter?
Yeah.
And um, my father sort of delivered the message across the board that, I'm not a player for you on any of those things. And so,
Mm,
and I think in our various iterations of being a person, we get that, right? And so for me, it was about stopping the transgenerational pull of bullshit and trauma
mm-hmm.
that was handed down to me from my father. Most of the time, when we are unconsciously parenting, we parent as we were parented, right?
Right.
And so I was, um, I didn't get these things, so you're not going to get these things, and on
Mm-hmm.
down the line it goes until somebody has the courage and mindfulness enough to stop, push pause, and go, I don't think I want to do that this way anymore. And so that for me has been how I've redefined fatherhood, is to provide those things that were not provided for me, and to redefine what it is to be a strong dad,
Yeah.
a strong man.
You know what's unfair in this world? I mean, there's a lot of things unfair in this world, but someone like you who didn't get those things, the positive regard, the safe space, that sets you up uh, where it's probably going to be harder for you to give those things.
Mhm. Yep.
People who grew up with healthy dads and in a safe space who got those things, it's easier for them to then pass that on to their child. Do you know what I'm saying? And
I
it should
do.
be the other way around. It should be the people who didn't get them, it should be easier for them to then execute, not harder because they didn't get them. It's like the whole rich get richer and poor get poorer. It's
That's
just
right.
not fair, you
It's
know?
not fair, and that's exactly right. And I do see people who do swing the other way, because I didn't get that, and maybe that's me. Because I didn't get these things, I'm gonna make sure that I provide that for my kids.
Yeah.
But I think by and large, you're right, and that's I think that every relationship that we, whether romantic or otherwise, we are recapitulating those childhood wounds again and again and again. All those
Mhm.
relationships are mirrors for us to kind of look upon self and decide, like, you know, who do I want to be here, right?
Yeah.
And I very much tried to do that with my kids.
What was the hardest thing for you after having your first? How old were you when you had your
Hmm.
first?
Ashley keeps all the numbers, but 37.
Yeah.
No, wait, no. Jake was one when I turned, so 39. Sorry,
39.
39.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Mhm.
what was that like for you at 39? What was the greatest struggle being a dad
Yep.
at 39? Where you were at your life and also in your marriage and all that?
So we waited long enough that I felt like, we were ready,
Mm,
and we had done a lot of fun, crazy things. And it was just time to, like, we'd gotten our educations under our belts and had our fun and all of that. And it was time to kind of move on. And we'd been together for some time.
right.
The hardest part for me was, it was it was really, this is the most difficult time maybe in my life and the most difficult time in my marriage.
Mm,
Because Ashley and I were very much star-crossed lovers always, and
yeah.
very much like in step, arms locked, like we're in it together, baby. You're mine, I'm yours, that whole thing. Partners in crime. And Jake came along, and you know, having a child will rattle you to your foundation. And
Yeah.
that's what it did,
Overnight.
right?
Overnight. Yeah.
Overnight.
Yeah.
And so, I try to prepare couples for this, and they're going, "Uh-huh, no, I know." And I'm like, they have no idea.
Yeah.
And and so for me, it was the fundamental shift, the tectonic shift that happened within our relationship, right? Like
Mm,
I was no
mhm.
longer her number one.
Right.
She was still
Right.
my number one or close to it. She had this primordial pull to keep this thing alive.
Mhm.
And object relations theory will tell you that the infant doesn't really know the difference between self and other at that particular point. He's
Mhm.
looking at mom like, no, this is her and I. And
Right.
so I'm watching her have this experience with our child that I'm not having. And I was fucking jealous as shit. And I was resentful.
Can
Yeah.
we just stop right here? Because you're touching on something that is so important that I think, we don't, acknowledge, men don't talk about especially,
Hmm. Hmm.
is that feeling left out,
Yep.
feeling unloved,
Backup parent.
backup parent. I know with Vanessa, and this is totally normal, she went through a phase of being touched out, and so
Fair
I
enough.
had to be sensitive to that, and
Hmm.
I wanted more touching, I wanted more intimacy, connection, and
Hmm.
I think, many men go through this, and then, because we don't talk about it much, we deal with it in kind of unhealthy ways and numbing, or we're reacting to it, or we're putting pressure on our partners, all that kind of stuff. But I just want to take a beat and say that this is a real thing that happens often.
Well, and I think there's a reason why we don't talk about it, because very often when we do talk about it, either we're talking to someone about it who is touched out, who doesn't have the bandwidth to deal with our
Right.
needs. I need
Right.
you to not have any needs right now, which is fair. It's totally fair.
Yeah.
And I think society, from a societal perspective, we tend to look at that and go, "She just pushed a watermelon out of her vagina. Get your shit together, dude." Right?
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
fair, and that's absolutely fucking fair. And what's sometimes things that are fair and true aren't always helpful, and it's not particularly helpful to then go, yeah, deal with your shit, dude, because it's
Yeah.
polarizing.
Yeah.
It's polarizing, and so
Yeah.
it might not be convenient that he's having these feelings. It may not seem like it's of paramount import, but I will tell you, he's still having them. And what he will do is he will scuttle, bury, and abandon both himself and perhaps his partner to a degree as well,
Sure.
because he's resenting. Mhm.
It is. Because I don't feel, look, it's not about, pointing fingers. I feel like
No,
both things are happening, they're real and honest. So,
that's
yeah, of
right.
course, for the woman, the hormonal changes, the change in body, the exhaustion, the touched out, I mean, the last thing she may want is connection, right?
Yeah,
In any form. And then
that's
for
right.
the man, feeling left out instead of touched out,
Hmm.
and, feeling undesired, put on the shelf, that kind of thing. And then
Hmm.
suddenly you're not the number one anymore. So, a form of rejection. So both things
Yep.
are happening. And I think many couples, point fingers, and then no one's being empathetic to each other. And there's a
Hmm.
lot of disconnect. Um,
That's right.
but I think because we are men, um, men don't talk about feeling lonely or rejected much, especially with other men. They kind of just
Hmm.
go through it, and they will go and either try to make more money, or
There
buy
you go.
things, or doing other things to maybe distract them, or they might go have an affair. Who knows?
Happens a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, that need for some version of connection can manifest itself in innumerable ways, and they're rarely healthy.
Mm,
And so it may be inconvenient. We may not feel like we have the bandwidth, but at some other level, either hopefully before, that tends to be the thing I try to counsel my couples around, because I get a lot of people who are coming in with infants 0 to 6, 0 to 5
mm-hmm,
children,
mm-hmm.
right? And they're essentially trying to fill the sandbags during the storm, right? We should have been filling those sandbags during
Before, yeah,
pregnancy. Yeah,
yeah.
saying like, look, this is going to happen. And this is the booby prize, you guys, because if you let this sort of your relationship atrophy during this time, um, when you get on the other side of this infancy, where then the kid becomes more a little more self-sufficient and you get your some of yourself back, the thing that you're going to want to give them is the container of your family and the container of your relationship. The byproduct of your loving relationship with your partner is the construct and container that they will feel loved, safe enough, and matter in.
Hmm.
And very often that container gets the shit beat out of it, from 0 to 4, 5, 6.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So anyone listening or watching right now, whether you are, it doesn't matter what side you're on. We'll actually cover both. What would be your advice, or what would be your prescription for the man who is feeling um, left out and rejected and alone and less than, and then also for the mom who is feeling touched out and going through all these changes and exhausted and sleep deprived and all that? Uh,
Mhm.
what is the prescription besides couples therapy?
Well, right, because we know that's a good one, but, the one that I have a lot of moms who are coming to me
Mm,
too, by the way,
mhm.
and they're in that life cycle event, and they're like, "I love my husband, and I can't stand him," right? And
Right,
right?
right.
I don't like him very much, or he
Yeah,
can't do
yeah,
anything
yeah.
right. And so
Yeah.
the thing I tell, whether it's the dads or the moms, is watch the story that you tell about them, right? Watch
Mm,
the story that you tell in your head about them. Is that my sweetheart that left the milk out again for the second time this week, who is awesome and amazing and tired and just works so hard? Or is it the no account son of a bitch who only thinks about themselves?
mm.
We are fomenting and creating beliefs about our partners. Thoughts become feelings, right? Eckhart Tolle
Yeah.
said it best. He said the
Yeah.
brain tells a story that the body believes. And so you are fomenting and creating a belief system, a concretized belief system, about who they are and who they are not in these moments. And so if you're going to steep yourself in your relationship on resentment and during this time, you will resent the shit out of this person.
Yeah.
You won't
Yeah.
like them.
Right.
You are mentally, we use narrative and mental rehearsal to do things better, right? to
Mhm.
to to do better talks, to do better in school, to do better in athletics, to do better on stage. We do use mental rehearsal. We are doing this in our everyday about our relationships, but we are
Mm.
mentally rehearsing to fall out of love.
Ooh, mentally rehearsing to fall out of love.
Mentally rehearsing
Yes.
to fall out of love. Yep.
So stopping that, being aware of that,
Yep.
and you're right. And I've also been super guilty of this. Um, Playing that broken record that is
Yep.
negative and
She
assassinating
never.
character. Yeah,
Yep.
the
If she
never
would just,
always. Yeah,
if he could, if he would only.
yeah.
Mhm,
Yeah,
mhm.
and then just by playing that, of course, like you said, thoughts are charged with emotion. Then we feel, you know, certain things, and
Yep.
then now we're thinking about. Now we're drifting. Now we're like, okay, I wonder who's better. I wonder if this is even going to work. I wonder if I
Right.
should leave. Like, yeah. Now we're like, yeah, 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 yeah,
Right, and then very often, it's like someone, maybe they'll meet someone else, and it's like the grass does look greener over there because it's a tangled mess over here,
yeah.
right? And so couples will often come to me and that toothpaste is out of the tube. And it's really hard to untangle those narratives, those belief systems that have been created about who they are and who they are not. So the challenge is to get a hold of that early.
Hmm.
Notice, be really mindful and aware of the thought that comes up. This is what I did. I did this in my relationship, and it was really hard because I had all the feelings that I've unpacked with you today about, feeling abandoned, not feeling apart, feeling I was the backup parent, all of those things, feeling not touched, feeling like she didn't want me to touch her.
Hmm.
And I had to catch myself and say, hold on a second, dude. And so what I would do is I would reauthor that narrative. And, sometimes I was more successful than others.
Yeah.
Um, but what I was able to do in those moments is I was able to sort of ferret out like what was kind of the not true, unimportant garbage and what were my
Hmm.
actual feelings. My actual feelings were still, hey, I don't feel close to you. I love you. I miss you. I don't feel a part of this. I'm
Mm.
lonely. My shit's coming up around this. Right. But I was able to separate that because I was watching the stories that I was building about her.
Would you recommend an exercise like to actually write this down instead of trying to in your head do all of this stuff? Is it better to say, like simply put,
Yeah, but
what
you
is
can't let anybody see that shit. You can't let anybody find that journal.
well, well, not write down all the bad shit. Actually, write down all the good stuff. What is true? What you're getting from this relationship? What you've built? What's valuable? To write that
Mhm.
stuff down.
Yeah,
Not
so
everything that
no,
it isn't.
no, I do. I actually have people write it down. I have them
Yeah.
write the bad stuff down, and they'll say, "So should we share this?" I'm like, "Absolutely not. Absolutely not."
Oh, so
'Cause you
you're writing it down more to kind of get it out of your system.
well, also for you to under because I'll say to people all the time, I'll be watching a client and I'll go, "Say what you were just thinking." And they'll go, "What do you mean?" I go, say what you were just came across your mind." And they'll go, "Well, I don't always think." And I go, "No, you do. You think it every day and you think it all the
Mm,
time. Just as you're
mhm,
about to articulate it, you're hearing it in your head as you're going to say it out loud, and you know how shitty that is. And you don't actually believe it necessarily." And
yeah,
so it's often alarming for people when they write down the things that are floating around in the deep, dark recesses of our minds when we think no one else is listening, right? And
mhm,
so getting them to write that out and go, "I don't actually believe that about her." No, wait, hold on a second. I can hear them start arguing it as they're putting it down. They go, "I don't believe this, but I know that I think this sometimes."
mm,
And so
y
now we know we've caught them at just the right time.
yeah, the difference between what we think and what we believe,
Yeah.
and also, and this is why we call them, distorted thoughts or cognitive distortions, our
Mhm,
thinking
mhm,
being distorted until we actually believe that that's true when it's actually not true. One
mhm,
of the early on, one of the big things with Vanessa and I are we're just very different. How we love is different. You know how you
mhm.
you were saying that you and Ashley did you say cross-eyed lovers?
Star-crossed,
Star
I think cross-eyed would be a little different.
Yeah, yeah. Cross-eyed lovers is very different than because
Star-crossed.
star-crossed lovers. Star-crossed lovers?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Star-crossed lover, yeah.
Okay, you guys were not cross-eyed lovers. Your vision, yeah, you guys look straight ahead. No, no, okay.
Straight at
Um,
each other.
yeah. So Vanessa and I are great partners. We function well, but we don't have the cross-eyed, eyed lover kind of energy.
Star-crossed. Yeah.
Star-crossed lovers. Yeah, sorry. I
Mhm,
definitely have that. She does not. The whole hopeless romantic, loving love thing, the anxiously
mhm,
attached. And so there are a lot of differences. And one of the things that really helped me was I consciously tried to find the beauty in the contrast instead of seeing
mhm,
our differences as the
mhm.
crowbar, our differences as because if I just focused on our differences, then that's going to lead to then why are we together, and maybe we should be
Absolutely.
with someone who's more compatible,
Mhm,
etc. But then I started to really be mindful at looking at our differences and not only accepting them but finding beauty in them, and that's when things really tip for me, and then I start to see her in different ways, and what used to kind of annoy me, I actually then started to find kind of adorable, and they didn't bother me as much. But
that's
I
it,
had to
that's the work.
consciously, intentionally do that. If not, the knee jerk would be just to drift.
Yeah, you reauthored your narrative about those differences.
Yes.
Yeah, see
Yes,
how
that's
powerful
actually
that was.
exactly right. That's
Yeah.
what it is. I reauthored the
Mhm,
narrative, the thinking. I
mhm.
reauthored them, and I flipped it where there's actually beauty in these differences.
That's right.
Um, yeah, and that's really
So
powerful.
every moment we have a choice. Every second together is an opportunity to, to reauthor that narrative
Yeah.
and to have a different outcome if you choose it.
So helpful. Thank you so much. So, write down some of these things. Obviously, if you're gonna write down all the things that you don't like or that are bothering you, I agree with you. That's a private thing. You don't show anyone that.
You don't,
Even
because
if you could explain it, it doesn't matter. People are gonna have hurt feelings no matter what.
you can't unhear
You
some
can't
things. Some
unhear.
things can't
Right.
be unsaid. And
Right. Right. Right.
the thing that I do is I say, okay, so now we've written down these raw thoughts that come out. Now, what happens when we infuse these with kindness, compassion, empathy, understanding? All
Mm.
right. What
Hmm.
happens when you dapple that in there? How would we reauthor those sentences, those narratives from that perspective?
Ooh, I
And
love that. I love that you're starting with a list of what is bad, what doesn't work, negative, whatever,
Mhm,
and
mhm.
then challenging yourself to take each one and reauthor those.
Yeah.
The reframe.
Well, when we say anything out loud, it's an old Buddhist technique. It's called naming. It's very simple. It's like we're gonna
Mhm.
what that thing that we can say out loud, the thing we immediately get some separation from it. And that's what part of that exercise is. It's to get some separation so it's not like on our brain and we go, oh, okay, hold on a second. That's not awesome. And
Yeah.
then we dapple in the kindness, compassion, empathy, and understanding. And then we sort of like, how would we shift that narrative? How would we shift that story with
Mm.
those elements put in there? And invariably, it does shift. It does change.
So here's more heavy lifting, a harder thing to do, but how can we do this to us? How can we
Sure.
shift narratives and reauthor some of what we think and about ourselves?
Yeah. So again, turning up the volume. And so when I do my work with my individuals, or whether I'm doing my work with the couples, it's the same. It's very similar. It's like,
Hmm.
so I will personify my inner critic, or the parts of me that are in there saying, you're a piece of shit.
Hmm. Hmm.
Those shame-based aspects of self. I will, put them in the chair and use that old Gestalt therapy method of like, okay, so you're here. I put them in the chair. I imagine them. Sometimes I put them in the back seat of the car and go ahead. And so they say the thing that aspect of self is saying in there all the time. And so I give it room to say it out loud. And if it's coming from my inner critic, then I know that it is a toxic narrative designed at some level to protect me from something. But then I offer kindness, compassion, empathy, and understanding to self,
Mm.
wisdom for self. And so I can sort of highlight and bring into stark relief those things that I'm saying about myself, and where we all do it all the time.
Yeah.
So it's a really good exercise. Mhm.
John, you're a pussy for not swinging at this guy at the bar when he
Well, right,
touched
but
your
like,
face, grazed your
yeah,
face.
I mean, look, what he did was he was a sack of shit for doing that, for sure, and you know what he was
Well,
up
he
to.
was drunk and he was, yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah, but, like,
yeah,
reauthoring the narrative is like, wisdom would tell us that, like, discretion was in fact the better part of valor. The bigger man in
yeah,
the place was the guy who wasn't spoiling for a fight with someone he didn't know, and rather than buying into his ego, he decided to protect his pregnant partner and
yeah.
leave. Mhm,
Yeah, yeah. And this is the harder thing to do is the thoughts that we have about ourselves,
mhm,
to correct them, to find, you know, value in self or to reframe things. It's slippery. It's hard to do that, but I do think it requires reps. And I
mhm,
also feel like when we going back to fatherhood, um, we can do things for other people, especially people we love, much easier than we can do for ourselves. So um,
mhm,
think about being a father, setting the example, thinking about what you want your kid or kids to take away from how you show up.
mhm,
Um,
mhm,
when I think about my dad, um, I don't. I mean, he's not with us anymore, but um, there were great things about him, he was charismatic, he was fun. When he was happy, he was great. He was always the life of the party. Through him, I learned about risk in business and how you just double down and you take chances and all that.
mhm,
And instead of focusing on those things, when I talk about my dad, it's always like he was an alcoholic. He was always
mhm,
at work. He never taught me shit. He was emotionally immature and not present. And
mhm,
so that's a narrative that I always say. And I think I think I'm ready to let go of that, even with someone who's dead, like to let go of that and start to see the good,
mhm.
because we all have, we're not just primary colors. We all have different shades and all these different parts. And he did have some amazing fun things about him that I never really repeat or shed light on because I'm so focused on the narrative of the negative.
Well, that's right, and look, he's your father, and so at some level, he's very much alive within you.
Mm,
Even though he's passed on, like, you still hear the echoes of those narratives that you were playing over and
yeah,
over again about
yeah,
him. And a lot of that's probably true. Like, he was an alcoholic and he was at work too much, and
mm-hmm,
all of those things. But that is, I'm going to imagine, a fairly one-dimensional look at the totality of the man. And so
right,
it's not that we're going to let go of all that and just pretend, because you can't pretend that that wasn't also true. But let's also invite in some other aspects, some other pieces of truth. Um, it's what I'm actually doing with my father, who's passed away. I've gotten in contact with my stepbrother, who I have had no contact with, and who
Mhm.
lived around the guy a lot. And he's offering me humanizing pieces to the man that I only knew as the abandoning father who never
Mhm.
sent any,
Mhm.
who never tried to see me, who never sent any child support checks.
Yeah.
Right? He
Yeah.
was he was he was far deeper than that. Was he a great dad to me? No. But it's interesting to kind of get to know the human that he was too, and to allow a little space, not necessarily for him, but in my own
Mhm.
heart. Right? There is some vestige of forgiveness in there as I begin to see him as more human than the monster that I made him out to be over the course of these years.
Yeah, I think that's so important. Yeah, I think also that process gives us a lot of closure, a
Hmm.
lot of acceptance, a
Yes.
lot of letting go. Um,
Mhm.
I kind of want to end with a quick story. I was on the couch with my daughter, and I was brushing her hair, and I was thinking, I had this memory that the safest I've ever felt with my dad was when I was about 9, and I would put my head in his lap. And
Mhm.
Koreans have this skinny wooden spoon that we put into our ears to clean out our ears. I don't think it's good
Mhm.
for our ears, but we don't use Q-tips. We use like a little spoon. It's kind of
Mhm.
gross. You scrape out all the
Wax.
ear
Yeah.
stuff,
Mhm.
earwax, and but it feels amazing if you're used to it. And so at 9 on Sundays, when he wasn't working, I would crawl into his lap, put my head on his lap, and then he would put the spoon in my ear and start scraping my spoon. I mean, start
Mhm.
scraping my ear. People are like, "What the fuck?" It's so gross. Um,
No.
but maybe 5 minutes. It's like scratching someone's back, right? It's like,
Yeah.
and I remember the feeling in my body because it takes a lot of trust to let someone put an object in your ear, right? And
Mhm.
he would do this
Mhm.
with his glasses and be really try to be present. He has to be. He's going to hurt me. And I remember it was only 5 minutes, but I remember how safe I felt in his lap,
Mhm.
allowing my
Mhm.
dad to do this to me. And then I thought to myself, "Fuck, he was younger than me doing this." Because I'm 51, combing Logan's hair. My dad was probably
Mhm.
in his 40s. And then I started thinking about everything he must have been struggling with his life, and just the language barrier coming to America and all this. And I
Oh
felt
my
a lot
God.
of I humanized him is what I did,
Yeah.
you know. And
Yeah, and it's not gross, it's sweet. He would do that,
yeah,
like
yeah,
yeah. Mm.
yeah. So anyway, stuff like that, allowing yourself to think about the other things, right? Uh,
Mhm.
that we are not reacting to and that we may minimize or have taken for granted.
Mm.
Hey, Larry, I want to end with any tips, any actionable items we can give fathers.
Yeah.
I mean, not that we're perfect. We're also learning. You
Yep.
and I are both in our 50s. I feel like we have a few tree rings, a little bit of wisdom, just life.
Yeah.
Definitely not Yoda, but or I
Mhm.
should just speak for myself. Um, but anything you've learned that you're like, man, I wish I knew this earlier, raising
Well, I
kids.
think this thing that I've sort of been steeping myself on for some time if we're afraid of our vulnerability, you better be sure that your kids and your the people who love you are going to be afraid of your vulnerability. They're not going to want
Mm,
it in the room. They're not going to know how to accept it. And I think debunking the perfect father and this Herculean strength that I think gets bestowed upon us, and some of it's cute and fun, but um, I think when we debunk that version of strength and we invite in the idea that there is vulnerability is not synonymous with weakness.
mhm,
um, Being
mhm.
a vulnerable man and showing that to I mean, it's quite vulnerable, both of you. Your father doing that was so sweet and kind.
Yeah.
um, and so i- in this vein, we begin to, well, when we invite in our vulnerabilities, in my whenever there's a sad movie on and we're watching it together, the boys turn and they jerk, they need to and look and see if I'm tearing up, you
Mm,
know
mhm.
and when I make a mistake, which I often do, I don't pretend that I didn't. I
Right,
don't
right.
leave it. I don't not speak to it. I turn to them and go, "Not my best moment, fellas. Not
Yeah.
my best dadding moment." And I
Yeah,
own my
yeah,
shit and I tell
yeah.
them it's okay to be imperfect. And in my imperfection, I become actually stronger
Sure.
in my vulnerability by
Right.
redefining strength through vulnerability. Um, that for me has been the big piece is to redefine strength through vulnerability.
Hey, lately I've been trying to think of a word that means the same or similar to vulnerability, but not use the word vulnerability because there
Yeah.
are some wellness words that are so played out they don't
Hmm.
they don't resonate anymore, like
Hmm.
narcissism or
Hmm.
even
Hmm.
codependency. Vulnerability is one of those words, and when it comes to
Hmm.
men, everyone is saying yes, we need to be more vulnerable. But what's another word? Can you think of another word that kind of means the same?
I've got one, two, maybe. Follow my thinking on this, and it may be getting close to played out. It was 2023's word of the year. It's authenticity,
Mm, yeah.
right? Because if I'm authentic, it means I'm real, and if I'm real, then I am allowing room for all aspects of myself, even the ones that nobody claps for,
Yeah, but that's a
right?
power. Okay, so for me, that's a more powerful word because when people say vulnerable, they just think like, oh, you got to be aware of your feelings, or you
Mhm,
got to cry, you
mhm,
got to show tears.
mhm, mhm.
Authenticity to me has different actionable items. Authenticity means to be honest with yourself, no
Right, but
matter
there in order to
who's in
do
the
that, you have
room.
to be vulnerable.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Of course, the vulnerability
Yeah,
will come in, but we don't have to
yeah.
announce that.
No.
But if you focus on being
Mm-mm.
authentic, the vulnerability is kind of baked into the process.
Yeah, the one behind it that I would use is alignment.
Yeah. Ooh, I like that too. I like that too.
Yeah. Yeah, if I'm in alignment, then I'm aligning with all aspects of me, the
Hmm.
darker parts. I'm the yin and the yang, the light and the dark, and within that, there's the opportunity for wholeness.
Yeah.
We want to deny those pieces of us, those vulnerable parts, those weaker parts of us. But what we don't understand is that real strength comes from wholeness, and that
Mhm.
is through authenticity and through alignment. That's being real and letting our insides match our outsides. Holy shit, is that vulnerable? Is that scary? Is that being real? Try it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Watch what
It's it's
happens.
it, it's hard. I also gravitate to solid self and pseudo self
I like
by
that. Yeah, yeah,
Bowen.
yeah. Hmm.
And if I'm ever feeling pseudo around my child or people I
Hmm.
care about, I ask
Hmm.
myself, well, what does it look like to be solid? And then see if I can execute that. And also, if I'm being pseudo, why? Why am I being false in this moment? What am I
Hmm.
trying to prove?
Yep.
Where's this coming from? And then
Hmm.
what would it look like to be more in my solid self? And then that's the execution. And that may be giving yourself permission to cry. That may be, combing your daughter's hair. That may be announcing to your child that you are not perfect or that you fucked up, and that's
Yeah.
okay. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. All of that. I like that solid self because I've been looking for something other than the wise self.
Yeah, the wise self sounds a little too Yoda.
It's a little too
It's a little
lofty for
too
me.
yeah, yeah, yeah. After my divorce, I got solid self on one arm, pseudo on the other arm, and it's not a light switch. They're all kind of both existing, and I lived a
Sure.
very pseudo life before, so now I try to be more in my solid self. Lara, thank you
Yeah.
for this conversation and
Always a
episode
pleasure, my
2.
friend.
Yeah,
Hmm.
check out Lair Torrent on Instagram. Follow him; he's a great follow. And also, if you haven't listened to episode 1, check that out. These are sprinkled throughout my podcast, so check out
Yeah.
episode 1, and then meet us back for episode 3.
Look forward to it.
Yeah, thank you for listening. Be well.
All right, bud.
Wait, stay here.
Yep.
Okay.